And how's it going, everyone? And welcome to No Fun Alloved's guide series on Waterdeep Dragon Heist, a 5th edition module. Today we're going to be covering Chapter 2, the City of Splendors. Your players are going to be able to finally spread their wings. Of course, there's going to be a ton of spoilers. Players do not watch this. DMs that want added insight, go and stick around because there is a lot to cover here. So here it is. Your players went through all that hard work finding Floon and rescuing Renair. And what do they get as a reward? They get this destitute, destroyed house. But my goodness, look at it. Could you imagine inheriting a 4-story, well, it's really 3 stories and a little nook, 3-story mansion? That would be so incredible, especially in a pretty decent place in the city. So what is this chapter all about? You might have thumbed through it a little bit and seen that there really isn't too much going on here. And because there really isn't, this is where you as a DM are going to have to spread your wings. Chapter 1 was a roller coaster where we push our players forward and they go on a quest and they take a lot of twists and turns, see the city, and meet some friends and make some enemies along the way. Chapter 2 is where this game opens up. Your players are given the keys to Trollskul Manor, and it's there where your players are going to discover Trollskul Alley in all of its beauty, and also, very importantly, is where they're finally going to start making more and more friends all throughout the city. This chapter is fantastic for that, but of course there isn't too much guidance in that regard. You're going to have to allow yourself to open up here and allow for a lot of crazy things to happen, but that's okay because not too many crazy things can really happen. They're only level 2, they haven't made too many enemies yet, and most important of all, they're going to try and do something with this mansion. I've seen some groups not care about the Trollskul Manor. It's technically possible, but more often than not, when most groups get their hands on a piece of property in a city that they can make their own, they're going to want to do something with it. So to kick things off here, we have the intro to Chapter 2, and it details for us Trollskul Alley. This is where your players are going to call home. Hopefully they're going to call it home. And this is where they're going to make a whole bunch of friends in their neighbors and also an enemy. This is extremely fun. This makes the world feel real. I've said this before, but you want to make the world feel lived in, not living for the players. So we get this detail on some of the neighbors your players are going to have. We have the Bent Nail, ran by Tally, and your players are going to get to know that this male elf carpenter can be their friend. Your players are going to find the Steam and Steel, ran by Embrick and Avi, that can do all of their smithy needs. They're going to find Corella's Crown, ran by Fala, and Fala can go ahead and brew up some awesome potions for the party. Your players are going to meet Vincent Trench at the Tiger's Eye, a investigator who's in reality a Rakshasa. Wow, pretty cool. And your players can go to the Bookworm's Treasure, ran by Rishal the Page Turner. And it's there where some of your spellcasters can get some of their spellcasting needs. In Area 7, we have the sewer access, and that allows for any shenanigans to happen because anybody can pop up from the sewers at any time and strike at anywhere. So we get some detail on our neighbors here, but there's two things. One, we don't get enough detail about these characters. Each one of them is extremely fascinating and can be easily expanded upon. But two, as you may note, obviously not all of the neighbors are listed here. So what do you do if you have a socialite group that knocks door to door and starts asking everybody in the neighborhood who they are, what they're doing, yada yada, this and that? That's entirely left up to you. Are you going to go ahead and say that everyone around here is just commoners that is just going about their daily lives? Are you going to go ahead and say that, hey, maybe the next door neighbor's a guard, and then the person 2 doors down is just living off of mommy and daddy's money and just bumming here? You can go ahead and make so many fine additions to this alleyway. And speaking of fine additions to the alley, let's go ahead and take a look at some of these maps provided by Foxglove Armor. These places really make the individual places come to life. Your players go ahead and stop by the Tiger's Eye just to talk. And there they discover, oh, this guy's a private eye, and he's got a tiger motif. That's pretty cool. Your players go ahead and stop by Corella's Crown, and they discover, oh, they are dealing with a whole bunch of fun stuff here. Let's go ahead and look around. You know, your players are going to get invested in their neighbors because if they are friends with their neighbors, that's going to go a long way. If your players do not start off on good terms with their neighbors, then unfortunately there's going to be some bad times in their way. And here is something that many DMs do to make this city truly come to life. Making it feel real and making it feel lived in. Putting up some sort of newsletter or some piece of information. town criers crying out the goings on in the city. Your players are major people in the city. They may feel insignificant because they're only level 1 or level 2 or whatever else, but they're interacting with very important people, and of course that is a big deal. So yeah, it'll probably make the news that Trollskul Manor is getting some new residents, and this place has a dotted history. And yeah, your players are going to learn about the other goings-ons, about all these other people around. That just makes it feel so good. So you could, of course, go this in depth and make a newsletter that comes out every 10 days and has some goings on in the city. That is a pretty great way to give your players some exposition of what's going on, but not feel as forced. And that's entirely up to you. So, of course, your players are naturally going to explore around their new residence, in which case you can go ahead and show them all this great information. Your players walk inside, and Trollskul Manor is just terribly destitute. This place has not been in use for quite some time. And also important here, your players will discover that this place is occupied, but not by people, but by a ghost, a specter to be in fact. This poltergeist named Leaf is gonna go ahead and try and scare away the players because he doesn't want his place being ran down. He wants this place to shine, and he doesn't think that your players are up for it. But here's the cool part. Should your players perform a seance with Leaf, either by contacting him directly or hiring someone to appease Leaf, then your players can talk to him. And it's there where if your players promise to restore Trollskul Manor to its former glory and make this place a thriving business, then Leaf can be appeased. In which case, instead of having a obnoxious poltergeist, which is either, destroying the business or harming people, they can actually have a friend by their side in the form of this poltergeist that is going to help and do things such as pulling out chairs, unlocking doors, and so forth. That is so amazing. Of course, some players may be scared of the ghosties and decide to destroy poor Leaf, in which case a fight will ensue that will have your players crawling all the way up the Trollskul Manor until they finally get to the parapet up top and deliver the finishing blow. The great thing about inheriting this location is your players are going to see the potential. They see that first floor as a tap room, but then they see that the upstairs is a living quarters. We have a common room, a hall, some bedrooms, some spare bedrooms, a library and study, and we've got some attic bedroom space, and we also have some cellar space. Your players are going to be thinking to themselves, not only can this place be a place of work, but this can be a place of living. And your players are going to look around and see all the potential. Unfortunately, that potential might be stunted a little bit because your players are going to inevitably start asking around, and more importantly, some people are going to arrive and say, hey, what's going on? Who are these people that are just showing up to the player's door? Your players are going to be bombarded by the Carpenters, Roofers, and Plasterers Guild, the Sellers Guild, and Plumbers Guild, and so on and so forth. All of these guilds. Should you go ahead and read Volo's in Kyridian and Waterdeep, you're going to discover that this city is ran by the guilds. The guilds control everything, and the guilds will easily help anybody who pays their dues, but if you do not pay their dues, then you will be finding yourself lacking. So, your players should hopefully understand this, that you have to operate through the legal system. You just pay your fines, that's the end of story, and everything is provided for you. Your players inherit this location, and they have a whole bunch of people come up to them, and once all is said and done, your players are going to learn that it is going to be a one-time expense of 1,000 gold to renovate the tavern over 12 days, and it's going to be 250 gold in guild licenses and contracts paid up front. So 1,250 gold is quite a staggering sum. Most groups will not be able to afford this. However, your players could theoretically have ransacked the Zentarum hideout and gotten a decent amount of gold. Your players could have gone and ransacked all the Xanathar guild and gotten a decent amount of gold. Still, more often than not, it is not enough. That is where the factions come into play. As previously mentioned, even though your players may seem like small fry, only level 1, level 2, whatever, they are big shakers and movers in this world. The fact that they helped not only Renaer Neverember, but also Volo, their word is going to spread. The fact that there's up-and-coming adventurers that are now residing within this location, especially if they inherit the Trollskul Manor, guess what? They've got a place of residence, and that is an easy way for anyone to contact them. And because these people are up and coming, You know what that means? All the factions are going to want to get their hands on them quick because, hey, if they join our faction early, that means they'll be with us forever. So it's here where we're detailed out a good amount of information about each one of the factions that your players can join. And of course, here's the big thing. Your players don't need to join any one faction, and if you really want to, you can allow your players to go ahead and join multiple factions if you really want to go ahead and play up the intricacies of this place. Now look at this. The skies are the limit for your players. Look at all these various factions that your players could be joining. All these factions that your players are going to be interacting with, whether they be on a first name basis with all of its members, or if they go ahead and work in the shadows. Look at all these factions which are going to make this city once again come to life and make the world feel lived in. Because these factions are constantly doing things, and every once in a while they can go ahead and grab your players and make them feel like they're doing something. But always make sure that these factions are present in the world. In the next video, I will be talking about each one of these factions and how they interact with the world and how your players are going to be interacting with the city once they join some of these factions. But just a quick glimpse here, we can look at the Bragan Dareth, controlled by the Drow and specifically Jarlaxle Bainray. The Emerald Enclave, full of the hippies that want to keep the world in balance. We have Forest Grey, a group of adventurers that do awesome and incredible things. We have the Harpers, who are secretive, but really not that secretive because they always reveal themselves. The Lord's Alliance, which is all about the sprawling cities that are located up and down the Sword Coast. The Order of the Gauntlet, full of paladins, knights, and clerics that try and do honorable things. And the Zentarum, a shady organization, but specifically in this city, they're not as shady as they once were. Now what I want to talk about is that money, because your players are going to be chasing after the money. They want to open up this tavern. They want to become power players in this world because money is power, and with that power, they can do whatever the heck they want. And in the beginning, they may start out with a legitimate business, but then go ahead and move on to other things. But more than likely, they're going to start a legitimate business. So how do your players get that 1,250 gold? Well, your players really have two options. Either one, they start working for it by doing all the faction quest and maybe going ahead and just bumming off of people. Or two, they can go ahead and take out a loan. They can take out a loan from any number of incredibly wealthy people here. But the two that really spring to mind are Mert the Moneylender and Istrid, Horn of the Zentarum, specifically of the Doom Raiders. So, of course, taking out a loan is a pretty significant deal because if your players take out their loan, they can immediately go ahead and open up their business and they can start rolling onto that money chart and start generating some gold. But of course, if they take out a loan, they could find themselves in a spiral of debt they can never pay themselves out of. So as we can see here as well, should your players finally get that place up and running, it is gonna still cost some money. It does cost 60 gold each week for recurring expenses, for the maintenance and the hirelings and the guild expenses. But of course, your players should hopefully try and turn a profit. If your players are feeling rather lucrative as well, they can go ahead and spend some of their own hard-earned gold to go ahead and promote the business, in which case every 1 gold they spend promoting will add a 1 to that D100 roll. The last thing I want to talk about for this video was the time. So your players typically are playing in these modules where they're going all around the world and saving crazy things and battling this and that and this and that. But in this campaign, it is presumed that you're spending a long amount of time in game because you generate stuff only every 10 days and certain events aren't going to take place for a while. So it is presumed that chapter 2 is going to take a long in-game time. How does time play into your campaigns? Do you regularly track it, or do you just go ahead and handwave things? Do you go ahead and just ask the players, hey, what do you do during, this set amount of days? Or do you role play out each and every individual day? That really does change the aspect of chapter 2. Chapter 2 traditionally is a freeform, your players are going around doing whatever they want kind of style, but you can go ahead and change that up to your own wills. So for my recommendations here for chapter 2, run it long enough that your players get invested in their business, in the friends that they've made, and get them invested in the world around them. But just long enough for when you finally decide to drop that fireball in chapter 3, it's meaningful. If you do it right away, then there isn't that much loss. And if you take too much time, then unfortunately your players maybe get a little worn out. It's really up to you. This campaign is so incredibly unique in that it starts off with this railroaded adventure and then goes in this freeform style, and then beyond it becomes once again another railroad. So chapter 2 here is the make it or break it for you. What do you do about this? Do you go ahead and run this as a railroad as well? Do you allow this to be a complete sandbox? What do you get up to? There is no one right answer, but once again, there is wrong answers. It just depends on the kind of players that you have. So go ahead and tell me, what are your plans for chapter 2? Are you going to have them meet with every single representative of the factions? Are your players going to go ahead and deal with Trollskul Alley and try and renovate the place right away? Are your players going to transform the bar into something else instead? We're going to be covering those in the next one, but I just want to get a base understanding of chapter 2 here in this first video. Go ahead and tell me all of these things because I want to know. That is going to do it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to all my amazing patrons up here. You guys are just absolutely incredible. Thank you so very much. That is going to do it for me. Thank you so much for listening, and I cannot wait to see you all in the next one.